welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. It was a warm evening in late spring when I came home early from work, hoping to surprise my wife, Laura, with dinner. As I approached our cozy suburban home, the soft golden light spilling from the kitchen window painted a picture of domestic bliss. But the scene I walked into shattered that illusion instantly. I quietly unlocked the door, stepping into the muted hallway. The usual sounds of Laura bustling around in the kitchen were absent. Instead, a hushed whisper seeped from the living room. Curiosity edged by a sudden unease, I tiptoed closer, my heart thumping oddly in my chest. Peeking around the corner, I saw Laura, phone pressed to her ear, her expression a mix of frustration and guilt. She didn't notice me standing there, her focus was entirely on the voice at the other end of the line. "I can't meet tonight, my husband is home," she murmured, her voice a soft dagger. The room spun slightly as her words sank in. "Yes, I know, but it's risky. We can't just. Look, we'll figure something out." My heart was torn apart by the realization that she was leading a double life. The woman I had shared my life with for nearly a decade, the woman I trusted more than myself, was a stranger. I felt a cold grip tighten around my chest. Retreating silently to the hallway, I leaned against the wall, struggling to process the betrayal. Minutes passed, or were they hours, as I wrestled with the surge of emotions. Anger, hurt, disbelief, and a burning sense of betrayal churned within me. When Laura finally ended the call and stepped into the hallway, her smile froze as she saw my face. "Mark. You're home early." I was just. "Who were you talking to?" I cut her off, my voice colder than I had intended. A flicker of panic crossed her face before she masked it with confusion. "It was just a friend from work. We were discussing a project." "Don't lie to me, Laura." My voice rose, a harsh edge slicing through the quiet of our home. "I heard you. Who is he?" Laura's face crumbled, and she took a step back, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape. "Mark, I can explain." "No," I said firmly, stepping past her to grab my jacket from the rack. The sense of betrayal was too raw, too sharp to allow room for her excuses. "We'll talk about this when I can trust myself not to say something we'll both regret." I left the house, my mind racing with plans. The initial shock was rapidly giving way to a calculated fury. She had deceived me, and for that, she would have to face the consequences. As I drove away, the evening sun dipping below the horizon, I made a decision. I would ruin her life as she had ruined mine. Divorce, humiliation, whatever it took, I hadn't figured it all out yet, but I was done being the fool in her game. And thus, I began plotting my revenge, the details of which would unfold in the shadows of our broken vows. After driving aimlessly for what felt like hours, the sky darkened to a deep velvet as I finally pulled into the parking lot of a dimly lit diner on the outskirts of town. The place was nearly empty, a few scattered patrons lost in their own late-night worlds. I ordered a coffee, its bitter warmth a small comfort against the chill that had settled inside me. I pulled out my phone, hesitating. The number of a private investigator a business colleague had once recommended flashed on my screen. Taking a deep breath, I dialed. It was time to know everything. "Mark Wallace," I introduced myself, my voice steady. "I need your services." The PI, a man named Tom Reynolds, agreed to meet the next morning. "We'll get to the bottom of this," he assured, his voice gruff yet oddly reassuring. I spent a restless night in a motel room, my mind racing with every possible outcome. The following morning, I met Tom at his office, a nondescript building nestled between a bookstore and a coffee shop. His office was stark, functional, lined with shelves of files that hinted at countless other stories of deceit. "I need to know who he is, how long it's been going on, everything," I said, laying out photos of Laura and details of her usual routines. Tom listened, nodding occasionally, jotting down notes. "We'll start with surveillance, tap into her communications." "Give me a few days," Tom promised, his demeanor professional, detached. The next few days were a blur of waiting and agonizing over every detail of my marriage. I kept a distance from home, staying at the motel, my calls to Laura short and perfunctory. Just busy with work, I'd tell her when she asked why I wasn't coming home. Finally, Tom called. "I have something you should see," he said, a weight in his voice. We met at his office again. He had videos and transcripts laid out like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to complete. "There's a man, meets her twice a week," Tom began, pushing a photograph across the desk. It was a man I recognized, a mutual friend named Derek. My stomach turned. "They've been careful, but we caught some conversations. It's clear this isn't just a friendship." Listening to the recordings, hearing Laura's laughter, so carefree and intimate, twisted the knife deeper. The details were damning, their plans, their deception laid bare. "What do you want to do?" Tom asked when we finished, his eyes searching mine for a hint of my intentions. "I want to confront them. Both of them. Tonight." My voice was calm, but inside, a storm raged. I drove home that evening, my hands steady on the wheel despite the turmoil inside. Laura was surprised to see me. "Mark. You're home early," she said, a nervous smile playing on her lips. "Not alone," I replied, stepping aside to reveal Tom with his camera. Her face went pale, her eyes darting to the equipment then back to me. "What is this, Mark?" "Derek is on his way," I stated, watching as the fear took hold. "We're going to clear the air, all of us." When Derek arrived, his confusion turned to shock as he saw the setup. "Mark, I can explain." "Save it," I snapped. The confrontation was fierce, accusations flying as the truth was dragged into the light. Laura sobbed, her apologies mingling with Derek's clumsy attempts at justification. I listened, the recorder in my pocket capturing every word. When the storm of words subsided, I was left with a hollow victory. The betrayal was confirmed, the wounds deep and raw. "I want a divorce," I said finally, the words tasting of ash. "And I want both of you out of my life. Tonight." They left, and the house fell silent. I sat alone, the recordings playing back in my mind. This was just the beginning. My revenge had taken shape, but the full scope of it was yet to unfold. The silence of the house echoed louder than any argument or confession ever could. In the wake of Laura and Derek's departure, I felt both a chilling emptiness and a fiery resolve. My next steps were clear, outlined with the precision of a chess player poised to checkmate. The morning light spilled indifferently across the kitchen where we had shared countless mornings. Today, I sat alone, papers spread out before me, legal documents, divorce papers, and a more sinister collection of evidence compiled by Tom. I dialed my lawyer, a seasoned shark in the legal waters named Helen. "It's Mark Wallace. We need to fast-track the divorce. I have substantial evidence of infidelity." Helen's response was brisk, businesslike. "I'll prepare the paperwork. Considering your evidence, we can push for an expedited process. Meet me this afternoon to go over everything." The meeting was a blur of signatures and legal jargon. Helen assured me the divorce could be finalized swiftly due to the damning nature of the evidence. "She won't see a dime of your assets," Helen promised, a sharp edge to her voice that matched the bitterness brewing in my chest. With the divorce set in motion, my thoughts turned to a more personal form of retribution. Derek had been a friend, or so I thought. Betrayal by a stranger is one thing, but the sting of treachery from a friend sears deeper, and for that, I had a special plan. I met Tom again, this time with a different kind of request. "I want everything on Derek, financials, secrets, anything that can push him over the edge. Tom raised an eyebrow, a flash of intrigue in his eyes. That's a darker path, Mark. Sure you want to walk it? I've never been more certain of anything, I replied, the words cold and final. Over the next few days, Tom dug into Derek's life, unearthing more than either of us expected. Financial troubles, shady dealings, and a few skeletons that rattled loud enough to cause serious damage if they were to fall out of the closet. With each new revelation, my plan took a sharper, darker shape. I contacted a few key individuals who could influence Derek's downfall, a loan shark he owed money to, a business partner he had double-crossed. Anonymously, I stoked the fires of their discontent, watching as the flames began to rise around Derek. The climax came one evening. I sat in my car across from Derek's house, a nondescript sedan that wouldn't draw attention. One by one, his angry creditors and betrayed partners arrived, their faces grim. I had tipped them off about his assets, about hidden cash he had bragged about in intercepted messages. The confrontation was loud, even from across the street. Shouts echoed into the night, lights flickered, and figures moved tumultuously behind closed curtains. When the police arrived, summoned by a neighbor, I knew my work was done. Derek's life, much like he had helped ruin mine, was now spiraling beyond his control. As I drove away, a grim satisfaction settled over me. It wasn't joy, but it was a closure of sorts. The betrayal had cost me a wife and a friend, but they had paid dearly for their deception. However, the final act of my revenge was still to unfold. Laura was next, and the plans for her downfall were already in motion. The cold dawn was just breaking as I parked down the block from Laura's new apartment, a modest place that seemed a far cry from the comfort and luxury of our home. My heart raced not with fear but with an icy determination. Today would mark the end of this chapter of my life, sealed with a resolution that had brewed darkly over the past weeks. I adjusted the rearview mirror, not to check my appearance but to look myself in the eye, to see the man I had become. Revenge had reshaped me, honed my edges sharp and dark. I nodded at my reflection, affirming my readiness for what was to come. The street was silent as I approached her building. The early hour ensured few witnesses, and I preferred it that way. I bypassed the main entrance, heading to the back where I knew from Tom's reports she parked her car, a car I had once paid for. I slipped gloves onto my hands, the latex snug and cool, as I withdrew a small vial from my pocket. My research into her daily habits had revealed her reliance on her morning coffee, a vulnerability I was prepared to exploit. I had no intention of physical violence, my methods were more insidious. The liquid in the vial was clear, odorless, nearly undetectable, and devastatingly effective. I made my way to her car, quickly unscrewing the gas cap. A moment later, the vial's contents vanished into her fuel tank, a chemical designed to render the car inoperable within miles. A minor inconvenience, yet just the beginning of her unraveling. As I retreated from her car, my phone vibrated. A message from Tom flashed on the screen, a final piece of the puzzle snapping into place. A video file, evidence of Laura's deceit far deeper than I had known. I watched, my blood running cold, as the video showed Laura not just with Derek but with another, my own brother. The ultimate betrayal. Rage, pure and blinding, coursed through me. Yet, it was this rage that clarified my next steps, crystallized them into a single, ruthless plan. My family, my friends, she had tried to turn them all against me with lies and manipulation. Now, they would know the truth. I forwarded the video to every contact she had tried to corrupt, to every friend and family member, with a simple note: see Laura for who she truly is. The digital bomb dropped silently, invisibly, spreading chaos into her life just as she had to mine. As dawn broke fully, I drove to a cafe across from her workplace. From there, I watched as she emerged, confused and frantic as her phone buzzed continuously. She tried her car, only to find it stuttering and failing. Panic overtook her features, a mirror of the chaos I felt when I first heard her betrayal. Hours later, after ensuring her complete social and mechanical breakdown, I approached her as she sat defeated on a curb, her world crumbling. "Laura," I said, my voice calm, betraying none of the storm inside. She looked up, her eyes wide, tear-streaked. "Mark, please, There's nothing you can say," I interrupted. "You've shown your true colors. I just wanted you to know, I'm free of you, completely and utterly." I turned to leave, her sobs a faint echo behind me. At my car, I paused, looking back one last time. Laura was alone, truly alone, her deceit returned to her 100-fold. As I drove away, the weight of the past weeks began to lift. Revenge had been achieved, not through violence, but through revelation and strategic ruin. She had betrayed me, but in the end, she betrayed herself most of all. I was free, and that freedom was the closure I needed, the final chapter of our story sealed not with reconciliation but with a resolute and profound separation.